The music industry is a very crabs in a barrel mentality. A lot of the celebrities that you meet in the industry will be nicer people than your peers and coworkers. I've seen a lot of people in radio, DJs, on-air talent, producers, whatever, just get stuck. And I will say in the 2023 landscape of the music industry, that might actually be the most important lesson. You always need to know your worth. I have been meaning to make a video like this for the longest time, but it's scary. These are scary videos to make because it's very personal to me, and it's also, I feel like some people could feel a certain kind of way about it. Some people could get maybe even a little bit butthurt about some of the things that I would say, because even though I will never call anybody out on this channel or like name names or mention certain situations, I don't know, somebody could be watching this and think like, oh, they're talking about me or like whatever. So I always want to avoid that. But as a media professional who's not only proud of the work that I've put in, but proud of my career, and somebody who wants to continue having a career and longevity in said career. How many times can I say career? I would love to pass on some of the things that I know because maybe it would help someone. I think that's incredibly important to me, to be able to help in ways that maybe other people who don't have the experience could not. Not to say that I have all the experience in the world, but if anybody ever did want to have a career in radio, I feel like I would maybe be somebody who could give some advice. So if you don't know me, welcome to the channel. My name is Brooke Morrison. If you ever want to Google any of the things that I'm saying just to, proof that I've done the things that I have done, feel free to. But I was with iHeart for a very, very long time, almost 10 years straight. I worked my way up from being an intern and a board operator, part-time, worked multiple jobs to try to get in full-time into radio, and then was eventually given an on-air position outside of Los Angeles. I was on air in a ton of different markets. I've been kind of around the block in that way. Then I worked at a label for 2 years outside of the industry of my industry of choice, and then came back and returned to radio this year, or I guess 2023, within the past year. So I say all of that to say I've worked many jobs in the industry. I've worked alongside many other talent, and I feel like I can now say the things that I wish I would have known before getting into radio. And I can make multiple videos about stuff like this. If you're looking for other kinds of advice, feel free to hit me up in the comments, and I can see what I can do. But of course, again, it's like I really want to avoid negativity, bringing negativity onto the channel, speaking badly on people, which is why I don't really talk about like, oh my God, here are the celebrities that I hated, things like that, because I've met a lot of celebrities. But I think it's important to have these kinds of conversations. So let me know. But let's get to number one. If you want to start in any kind of broadcast journalism, if you want to be on air, if you want to be on screen, if you want to be a red carpet host, if you want to be on the radio, you're going to look and sound like crap for at least the first year that you try. That is not a bad thing. You can be the most gifted person in the world, and then 5 years later, you look back at a hosting reel or listen to an air check and your voice is 3 octaves higher than you remember it ever being, and you're wearing some weird clothes because you just thought that's what looked good at the time. These are things you learn as time goes on. These are skills that you hone as time goes on. That is a wonderful thing. But I thought, since I was outspoken, I liked public speaking, I studied pop culture my entire career, you're gonna pop in there and you're gonna kill it, and you're not gonna sound dumb ever. And of course, I sounded dumb. And that was okay. If somebody wants to give you the opportunity to be dumb sounding on the radio, that is a wonderful thing. And you push through that and you come out on the other side, hopefully not sounding dumb. It happens to all of us. Do not think that you need to quit or stop if you finally get on screen somewhere and you don't look amazing, or your skills weren't what you thought they were supposed to look like. Keep going, watch some YouTube videos, maybe read some books, watch some people that you admire in the industry, and see how they're handling themselves. You're gonna kill it. Number two, you do not have to move across the country just because the company that you work for wants you to. I will say, if you want to be on the news, if you want to be a weather person, it's going to take you probably moving to a smaller market to work your way up. That is a very specific kind of industry, and I will say that radio often mirrors that, and they would like to send you away to a smaller market to eventually work your way up to a bigger one. Now, the blanket statement comes in, you don't have to move. You can say no. If something doesn't work out at one company, pivot and go to another company. If that's the only company in the town that you want to work in, you might have to do some other digging in what else you can do in said city to become successful, to maybe return to that company someday. It really is about planning your moves. And for me, I was told multiple times by people that I trusted higher up within the company that I needed to move to a smaller market to one day move back. Now, whether or not that was true for me specifically, if I could go back in time, I would tell myself to stay. I personally moved from St. Louis, Missouri. I love LA. LA is full of energy, it's full of creators, it's full of literally the music industry, and that is where I wanted to live my life. But in my mid-20s, I was offered an opportunity in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is of course no hate to Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, I am from a kind of same size city in St. Louis, but that's not what I wanted to do in my 20s. I didn't want to go to another St. Louis and live my life there. Really what life becomes when you move for a job is just that. It's like if you don't have any kind of hopes and dreams of building your life in that city, you have to spend time there living your life. And so if all that's keeping you there is that job and nothing else, it's not going to feel good. You're going to end up like me and become very depressed. I gained a lot of weight. I struggled waking up in the morning, even though I was making really good money and I had followed the advice of the higher ups and people that I trusted within said industry, and it didn't work out. So as soon as I was offered a job in Miami a year and a half later, I jumped at that as well, but still recognizing that I wanted to be back in LA. So at the end of the day, if I could go back and tell my younger self to stay put and stay in the city that I loved, I would do it. Take that as you will. If you want to move around, kudos to you, do it. A lot of people in the music industry do for jobs. Even people at labels do it. It's a very personal decision. Never feel like you can be bullied into leaving. That's all I have to say about that. Number 3, this is a controversial one. A lot of the celebrities that you meet in the industry will be nicer people than your peers and coworkers. I will not go too deep into that one. Use your imagination. The music industry is a very crabs in a barrel mentality. I would definitely find your closest friends and people that you trust, like your inner circle, outside of the industry, because everyone is competing with each other, whether or not they want to be honest about that. So the celebrities, since they have to kind of be nice to you, those will be better experiences than, unfortunately, maybe being really close friends with somebody who might be after the position that you're also looking at. I'm gonna leave it there. But that is a very, very valuable lesson that I wish somebody really would have sat me down and explained to me when I first got to LA. Number 4, interviewing is a skill. If you're not constantly working on bettering that skill, you might end up looking a little dumb. And the reason why, this is one of the things I wish I knew before I got into radio, was that I thought if you sucked at something, you were just always gonna suck at something. I've always been the kind of person to work for what you want, keep trying, do the research, all this other stuff. But there was a point in time where I just felt as if I wasn't getting better. And because of that, I really started to doubt myself in a lot of different areas. And it wasn't just interviewing, but I think a lot of people think that if you're good at one thing, you're going to be good at it forever. Or if you're good at one thing, you're going to be good at all the other stuff too. And I will say interviewing is one of those things that some people get into radio and get offered all these great interviewing opportunities with like massive celebrities. And I've interviewed everybody from Fergie to Samuel L. Jackson. To be honest, a lot of the ones at the beginning were just crap. Like they were just really bad. And I do have some of my interviews on this channel as well. If you want to go check those out, I have Jackson Wang on here and he's been great. Victoria Monet is on here too. My hosting reels are on here. And this past year, I got to interview Christina Ricci, icon. But the funny story about that Samuel L. Jackson interview day was it was the same press junket as me getting to meet John Goodman and Tom Hiddleston, who now we know has ended up being such a, an actor in the zeitgeist over the past 10 years. He's only gotten a little, more and more famous as time has gone on. So unfortunately for me, whenever I was preparing for this press junket, I'm putting myself out there in this, I really focused on that Samuel L. Jackson interview over the other interviews that I was supposed to be bouncing around to during that press junket. If you don't know, a press junket is what they hold for actors for an upcoming movie right before the premiere or during the same week. They basically have a bunch of outlets come through and take turns interviewing these actors in a room. If you ever seen like 2 actors sitting in a dark room with like the movie poster behind them and there's like 3 chairs, that's a press junket. So I did that for Kong Skull Island. It was such a great experience, but I wish I would have put a lot more effort and energy into the Tom Hiddleston interview because that might have gained a little bit more traction over time. I would have really dug into somebody before he blew up with, the Thor stuff and, Loki, of course, has now 2 seasons of the show. And I just really think, like the Samuel L. Jackson interview went really great. I was really surprised with how that went, even though his manager kind of scared me at the beginning, saying like, if he doesn't like you, he's gonna be mean. And I was like, oh my God, don't be mean to me, Samuel L. Jackson. I love you. Again, that's another skill that in interviewing, I needed to work on. If I had 8 interviews in a day, I needed to spend just as much time on every single interview as everything else. And that was a lesson for me and something I think back on now. And I really wish I would have gotten more from that Tom Hiddleston interview. Next, this is actually my favorite one because they kind of like to gaslight you into thinking this is not true, and it really is. Just like in any other industry, if you stay in one position for too long, you are cutting yourself way short, and you are basically teaching your higher ups that you're not worth anything more than that. I've seen that happen so many times to the point where people have just given up on the entire industry and said, well, I'm not moving up in this one radio station, in this one company, in this one city, and because of that, it's time for me to like move on to another whole thing, which has always been heartbreaking to me. But kind of what you're showing the people higher up to you is that you're more comfortable in complacency and just being a part of the team, and maybe the station's big enough that it outweighs, you know, anything else that you truly want to do in your career, and that can be a really big misstep. And I know times are hard in all of these industries, so it's easy to say jump around to different companies and like go and try something else and, you know, add to your resume. But the worst thing that you can do in this day and age is have one thing on your resume. And I learned that as well, and not necessarily in a bad way for me, because I had so many different radio type positions on my resume. I wasn't just an on-air personality, I wasn't just a producer, I wasn't just XYZ. So that way I was able to transition out of radio for a little bit before wanting to get back into it. But I've seen a lot of people stay put in one job where they're paid a very specific amount of money, and 5 years later, they have gotten no raise, they have gotten no promotion opportunity, no, you know, great kind of like interview opportunities or anything, and kind of wondering what went wrong. And what went wrong, honestly, is that you kind of taught your higher ups, your programming director, etc., that they can kind of take advantage of you. Like, oh, they'll stick around. We don't have to give them a raise because they're going to be in this position anyway. And if they don't want to stay in this position, we'll just hire somebody else and pay them the same amount because everybody wants this position. So, you have to fight for what you want. I've seen a lot of people in radio, DJs, on-air talent, producers, whatever, just get stuck. Having one job, having one thing on your resume past 2, 3, 4 years is going to not bode well. And I will say in the 2023 landscape of the music industry, that might actually be the most important lesson. And the last one for this video, I have a lot more to say, believe me, but the last one for this video is, unfortunately, as a female in this industry, it is still really difficult to get the same amount of exposure and the same opportunities as your male counterparts and your male peers. And I am not saying that lightly. Like, I am not saying that as somebody who just likes to point things like that out, or, you know, think it's interesting or it'll make me sound interesting or anything like that, because I've heard all the arguments for those kind of things too. This is from my personal experience. This is from me watching a lot of great female talent be overlooked. This is me watching a lot of interviews go to the like 1 or 2 male talent at these major companies, like maybe in Apple Music, or maybe, you know, again, I don't want to call people out, but I'm saying like those are the type of companies that artists are considering whenever they're going on press tours. So you have somebody like maybe a Selena Gomez who's going to say, I'm only going to 2. I only want to go to X and Y. X and Y, unfortunately, if you have somebody who's been bolstered up, who's been protected in a lot of cases, who has had the same job for decades, it's just unfortunate for not only the younger talent, but especially the female talent who have never been able to access the same kind of opportunities. And the reason why I bring in gender to this, if you look at the industry and if you look at a lot of the major markets, you will see a pattern in talent. And that gets worse when you get into morning show territory. I know Liz Hernandez at The Wave is a female-led morning show, which is amazing. And Ellen K, of course, is a female-led morning show here in LA, which is amazing. Other than that, in market number 2, you would have loved to see some more women get the bigger opportunities worth $1 million contracts. And that starts with women also getting the midday shows, or women also getting the overnights, women also getting blah, 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 you know, it goes on. And then from there, not being typecasted, because from personal experience, as soon as I turned 30, I was already told by label representatives and you know, other people in the industry that it was time for me to move to an older demo radio station. And it went a little something like, hey, you know, like, since you're 30 now, do you want to do hot AC? And I was like, why would I want to do hot AC? Because I'm 30 now. And he responded, oh, yeah, well, you know, I just, you know, that's like the natural progression for it, right? And I was like, why? Because the guy down the street has been doing top 40 for 3 decades. And I just kind of like, I sat there and stared at him. He was like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. I didn't mean it in any kind of way. And it's kind of like this constant background thought that people just hold on to. It hasn't changed much. And I've unfortunately had the same experience with female bosses in the industry. I thought having a female boss in one of the markets that I worked in would be an amazing experience. And it was absolutely not. And I could go into that at a different time as well. But I say all this to say, the lesson comes in where you always need to know your worth. You always need to fight for what you believe you deserve and what you legit deserve, not just like believe you deserve. Don't let anyone tell you that your opinions don't matter. Don't let people gaslight you. Don't let people belittle you in any kind of way when it comes to those concerns, because I have always been somebody who's spoken up for those kind of things to anybody who wants to have that conversation. I'm always the first person to be like, yep, let's have it. Wonderful. Let's have that conversation. And I've always been somebody who would love to see more female talent in radio. And since a lot of positions within radio have disappeared over the past 3, 4, 10 years, the opportunities are even further and farther between, unfortunately. So it's more important now than ever to stand up for just talent in general, regardless of gender or what people think the ratings will be if you put a woman on air instead of a man. But that is all for me this time. If you have any questions or you have any concerns or comments, please hit me up below. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also to make sure that even if you disagree with me, that is totally fine, but please keep it cute to some extent. I would love to hear how you feel about a lot of these things as well, and your experiences within the industry, or any other things that you would like to know. I'm always here to help, and you can find me on Instagram at I am Brooke Morrison for more updates and more things that I'm up to working in the music industry too. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, love you. Bye.